Here we have four one-step equations. They're called one-step equations because there's only one thing being done to x. The way that I like to look at this is I ask this question, what's being done to x? And if I over here, I see that I'm adding 1. So I write add 1. And then I put a big line. And then in order to solve the one-step equation, I do the opposite of whatever's being done to x. Since I'm adding 1, I'm just going to subtract 1. So then I subtract 1 from both sides. I go left to right, I bring down the x. These add up to 0. I bring down the equals, and 6 minus 1 is 5. Well, this one's done. Here, when I ask what's being done to x, I see that I'm subtracting 2, so I put S2, subtract 2. And in order to solve it, I do the opposite of subtracting 2, and I add 2 to both sides. So I'm going to add 2 to the left side. The 2 goes under the 2, and I add 2 to this side. And then I go left to right. I bring down the x. These add up to 0. Bring down the equals, and 11 plus 2 is 13. And this one is done. Over here, when I ask what's being done to x, when a number is next to a letter, this is a coefficient next to a variable. We're multiplying, so this is being multiplied by 2. So in order to solve it, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I divide this side by 2, and I divide this side by 2. Fractions are a division problem. This symbol is not an algebra symbol. It's just a notation to show this is the division line, and then I have numerator, denominator, and this makes a fraction. So once I divide, 2 goes into itself once. So now I only have 1s around the x, so x is by itself, and 14 divided by 2, fractions are a division problem, is 7, and that one's done. Over here, what's being done to x is I am dividing by 5, so I put d5, and I do the opposite to both sides. Instead of dividing by 5, I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. This one, when you first look at it, looks more complicated. When I multiply this side by 5, since this is a fraction, I have to write 5 as a fraction. And over here, I can just put the 5. When I simplify my fractions, there are only 1s around the x, so I bring down the x, and this is 4 times 5 is 20. So here I have 4 examples, and I have addition on this one. I'm adding 6 to x. Here I'm subtracting 4 from x. Here I'm multiplying x by 3. And here I'm dividing x by 4. So when I do these, I'm not going to do the algebra this time. I'm just going to do them super fast so that you can see how fast you're able to do them. Since I'm adding 6, I subtract 6 from the answer, and I get x equals 1. Since I'm subtracting 4, I do the opposite. I add 4 to 12, and that's 16, and that's the answer. Over here, I'm multiplying by 3, so I just divide the answer by 3. And here I was multiplying by 3, so here I divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Here I'm dividing by 4, so I multiply 6 by 4 is 24.